Hi, you're probably wondering where I've been. So basically, I recently discovered sleeping during the day. So that's pretty much what I've been doing for the past however long it's been. Now, would you look at that? It seems I've amassed this mysterious power called a social media following. The number next to my face is a decimal point now. Whoa. I've gained a nickname, I'm collaborating with other creators, I've been officially inducted into the cult. It seems at this point I could reasonably be considered a bona fide Sonic tuber. But there is one thing I have yet to do before I can claim that status, isn't there? Something that every Sonic tuber does at some point or another in their career. This time. You already know how this works. Today I'm gonna rank every mainline Sonic game from worst to best. Despite the implications of that little visual joke I made a few seconds ago, I'm not gonna be doing this in a tier list format. Rather, I'm just gonna talk about each game in the order that I like them, discuss the merits and drawbacks of each, etc. With that said, let's just stop stalling and begin. Now, while this isn't a true mainline Sonic game, I've chosen to put it on this list because I do consider it sort of mainline adjacent. What I mean is that it was a platforming Sonic title released on a major console and had a fair bit of pre-release hype. My opinion on this game is complicated. To start this video's content on a positive note, I do think there are a lot of things to like about Secret Rings. For one, the presentation is stellar. The environments are really creative, look fantastic both in graphics and art style, and have a lot of unique gimmicks and set pieces that are pretty cool. I also really like the story. It's not the best Sonic story ever, but it has heart, and it's decently well written and acted. And again, the presentation of the story is quite nice with these hand-drawn storybook-styled cutscenes. Music's great, I mean it's a Sonic game, so no duh, but still. And that's pretty much everything I like about this game. Secret Rings is an on-rails, auto-running platformer that you play by tilting Sonic left and right with the Nintendo technology stick. Now, I used to be far more offended by the very idea of that control scheme than I am now, but that doesn't really make this game any better. My biggest issue with Secret Rings is that it feels like a solid chunk of the level design wasn't really built properly around the controls in Pirate Storm and this thing especially. The game includes mechanics to back up and brake, but I'm sorry, with the motion controls it's just not comfortable to do, especially when you have to do it to prepare for platforming or knock out a certain number of enemies before the game lets you move on. Let me remind you again that this is an auto-running video game. I just don't think it's very comfortable. This isn't exactly helped by the fact that the structure of this game is an absolute mess. The game's progression requires you to do all these missions, but it's not clear which ones you have to do, and the quality of these missions varies greatly. Sometimes it's fairly self-explanatory which ones you have to do, in Skeleton Dome and Levitated Ruin especially, but other times the game just refuses to give you any indication of what you actually need to do to proceed, so the game can take way longer than it needs to if you're not using a walkthrough. Ugh, don't even get me started on the level up system. In Secret Rings, you can level up Sonic to unlock more skills to make him snappier and more fun to play. The problem is that it's not like, say, Unleashed's upgrade system, where Sonic starts off controlling pretty well, but you gradually increase his stats and find upgrades to make traversal even easier and even more fun. No. In this game, Sonic starts off painfully slow, and you essentially have to grind for hours to make the game not control horribly, Sonic Speed Simulator style. Overall, while this is a very creative game that has a lot of fantastic ideas and a great story too, the gameplay itself is just really awful, and I don't think I'll be coming back to this one that much, at least not on original hardware. Yeah, the only reason this one's higher than Secret Rings is because this game doesn't hurt my arms. Ugh, this game is just kinda no good. I feel like calling this one a Mario Galaxy clone is kind of offensive to Mario Galaxy. My big problem with this game is how it controls. To sum it up, Sonic controls like a frickin' shopping cart. Like literally, if you've ever pushed around a shopping cart, that's what this feels like. This is a Sonic game with a run button. While yes, that is completely and utterly antithetical to the entire point of Sonic, that's not my issue with it. When not running, Mario would laugh at Sonic's speed here. When running, you can get a decent bit of speed to be fair, but doing anything means that you lose all of it. Jumps, you slow down a lot. Turned ever so slightly, you slow down a lot, etc. Speaking of turning, for some reason, turning when running is 8-directional, which would make sense if the game was on the original Wii, what with its weird analog stick and all, but the Wii U has a 360-degree stick, so I don't know why it's like this. Combine the awkward controls with pretty bland level design, stupid easy bosses, lots of automation, poor tutorialization, and a variety of other nonsense, most of which I don't find particularly fun, and it results in a gameplay style that I just don't like playing very much. There's also a parkour gimmick, which is a neat idea, but I feel it's a little clunky in execution, although I have been told by Xpool that it can be used to take cool shortcuts. I just thought it would be a little hypocritical of me to not mention that. It kinda sucks that this game turned out this way, because I think that Sonic combined with this Mario Galaxy-esque terrain is a neat idea and has a lot of potential, but Yeah, this ain't it, Chief. Sorry. What makes this game different from Secret Rings is that while I don't find the gameplay particularly appealing in either game, I don't really find anything else appealing at all about this one. Graphically, it's fine, but everything just looks plastic, and the level themes are as generic as it gets. The story's awful too, with lots of forced conflict and really generic villains. The music's okay, but I find a lot of it to be pretty forgettable. Like, seriously, as I write this script, I cannot remember what the music for Sky Road sounds like. Overall, I guess I see the appeal, but I just don't find this game fun to play at all. I'd rather play most other 3D Sonic games over this one, including our next entry, somehow. Hey kids, do you want to feel depression? Well, do I have a trick for you! Go to www.tcrf.net/Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 and read through the entire thing! Congratulations, you now have depression! Yay! This game makes me big sad. This was meant to be Sonic's big ol' 15th anniversary title, but due to a series of wacky shenanigans, it's all been said at this point. This game did have a lot of potential, but due to Sega being stupid and greedy, the game was rushed out the door, and as a result, we now have one of the most infamous video games ever made. Honestly, 06 isn't quite as awful as you've probably heard, but it is still pretty bad. The level design is pretty good, as is the music, but the controls, specifically the air controls, are just awful for almost every character. Blaze is okay, but all the others just have this stiffness to them that makes the game a huge pain to play. With the exception of Crisis City, all of the aesthetics pretty much just look like more washed out and boring versions of levels from Adventure 1. Smooch! And the game is really jank too. Even so though, I still have something of a fondness for this game, even if it is just on the merit that a lot of effort and passion was clearly put into it. And of course, Project 06 rocks. Just thought that deserved a mention. Last story update, hi! I feel like this game is a little overhated. This was hyped up to be a big return to the boost gameplay after Boom, and then it just kinda fizzled out. This is a really boring boost title. It's mostly just boosting in straight lines and levels that are far too basic and short to be enjoyed, platforming with the worst version of classic Sonic gameplay we have ever seen, and making OCs like an 11-year-old on DeviantArt. I just remembered that DeviantArt exists, and now I'm having a slightly worse day. I can't say I agree with most people putting it at the very bottom of their lists, like, yeah, it's not really all that good, but chill out a little, guys. It's still a very playable, polished game, even if it is just really boring at the end of the day. Speaking as someone who was 9 years old during the Forces pre-release war, and thus wasn't involved in it whatsoever, and only played it for the first time long afterwards, I don't think this game is awful. It's fine, it's whatever. It's competent, it's short, it's just fine. This game is stupid and dumb, and I love it. This game was made in 2005 when everything was edgy and epic, and graphics were like, whoa, realism, whoa, look how edgy, whoa! But honestly, it's just pretty silly. They took themselves so seriously with this whole what if Sonic but ow the edge concept, and something about it is so dumb that I kinda like it, but on an objective level, yeah, this game isn't that great. The controls are pretty slippery, the structure's a mess, and everything is just kinda sluggish, making precision pretty difficult. Level design is overall fine. The gun gimmick is actually kinda fun to mess around with. But overall, this game can get really tedious. Good music though, and cool aesthetics. And honestly, I don't hate the concepts brought to the table here, despite the writing being pretty much entirely consisting of awful, edgy cringe. But honestly, this game is so stupid that I kind of ironically like it a little, even if it's just because of how funny I find it. I did a video with G-Dub-A on this game a little while back, and I have more to say about it there, so check that out if you're interested.
First game on this list that I actually find quite nifty indeed. On the surface, this seems to be a typical classic Sonic affair, but in reality, it's actually quite a strange chap among these titles. The entire gimmick of this one is the time travel gobbledygook that Sonic gets himself into this time around. It can be tedious, but if you'll cook him with gas, then it's quite simple in fact to travel to the past a few... I don't think I did this right. This game can be a bit of a mess, but these levels are still the bee's knees, just like any classic Sonic game released around this time. The level aesthetics are also quite easy on the eyes, just like the lady I saw you with last night. A very unique time this one was indeed.
Ah yes, the OG. Honestly, I was having a tough time deciding whether to put this or CD first on the list, but I think I like this one slightly more because unlike CD, I can do a casual playthrough of this one in a few hours and have a pretty good time, whereas CD is a little more of a commitment. Green Hill Zone is obviously the standout level here, but I honestly like a lot of these levels. Even Marble Zone can be fun to jump around in. Labyrinth Zone, all 4 acts of it, is the only level in this game I would really consider to be totally awful personally. Even Scrap Brain Zone feels really dramatic and cool in my opinion. I think this game holds up pretty well. Yeah, you'd really think the 2 storybook games would be closer together on this list, but no. I actually like this game quite a lot. The best way to describe it is that it's essentially Secret Rings, but without all of my issues with Secret Rings, and a legitimately cool gimmick thrown in there. I think comparing Sonic with a sword to Shadow with a gun is laughable, but I can talk more about that some other time. The progression system, the upgrade system, the mission system, the controls, the physics, the music, the story, the presentation, it's all a massive step up from Secret Rings, and they managed to make it a lot of fun. Mainly due to this sword buzzsaw attack, which is spectacularly satisfying to pull off correctly. Speaking of story, this is undoubtedly one of the best in the series, being held by Shiro Meikawa, the same guy who penned Adventure 2 and various other stories from that era, which I enjoyed a lot for the most part. It even has a legitimately well-done plot twist. The fake ending is set up a lot better than Secret Rings. Also, Night of the Wind is my favorite Sonic vocal theme of all time, bar none. Overall, while Secret Rings is an absolute mess, I really like Black Knight. It's why I'm so upset that we never got a 3rd storybook game to get even more creative and wild with what was possible in this format. But hey, at least we got this, and I'll absolutely take it. I think this game is a little overrated, but that doesn't mean it's bad at all. In fact, I think this game is great. Sega, in a rare moment of Sega brilliance, decided to take what was working and just get rid of the stuff that people didn't like instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Who are you and what have you done with Sega? And hey, I mean, it did work. The modern Sonic stages are super fun for the most part, and the classic Sonic stuff, while not entirely accurate to the originals, is also pretty fun to mess around with. That's about it, honestly. Yeah, outside of the gameplay, there's not that much to talk about. The aesthetics are all reused and the story is a big nothing, so here it's all about the gameplay, and well, like I said, it's a lot of fun. The modern Sonic stages are well designed and fun to speed through, and classic Sonic has this stupid overpowered spin dash. It's just a lot of fun to play around with, even if it might be a little too powerful. I wish this game was longer, but what we got here is buckets of fun. Anyway, that re-release looks cool. Bro, look at that! Look at the final rush of the Black Doom and Radical Highway! This game is the perfect sequel to Sonic 1. Take what worked and make it even better and cut back on some of the stuff that... the game is a lot faster this time around. Sonic 2 removes Sonic 1's ground speed cap and adds the spin dash, which has since become a Sonic staple. Tails was also introduced in this game, although here he's just a carbon copy of Sonic gameplay-wise. He's pretty cute though. The level design is a lot better and a lot more consistent than Sonic 1. I have a lot of fun playing this game, so why is it as low on the list as it is? Well, after Mystic Cave Zone, the game just pretty much completely falls off. Oil Ocean Zone is pretty boring, Metropolis Zone is an unfair mess, Sky Chase is really boring too and locks you into this auto-scrolling plane minigame, Wing Fortress is unnecessarily tedious, and I can still vividly recall the disappointment that I felt when I got to Death Egg Zone and it was just a few boss fights, both of which can be frustrating but pretty alright once you get the hang of them. This may be a hot take, but I also think I prefer Sonic 1 aesthetically to Sonic 2 as well. Like, when I look at Sonic 2's levels I go, yep, that's definitely pixel art of a stage in a 2D platforming game, whereas with Sonic 1, for some reason these places just feel more like places. For some reason Sonic 2 has always felt a little more flat to me, not sure why. The game still looks really nice though. Also, the special stages suck, easily my least favorite out of any classic Sonic game. The 23 remasters and Origins improve things somewhat, but they still rely far too heavily on memorization, so I'd say they still suck even without Tails losing all your rings. This said though, Sonic 2 is a great game overall and a brilliant sequel to the original Sonic game. Okay, just hear me out on this one. Look, I get that it's somewhat of a controversial pick to put colors above Generations, but I don't know, I've always just personally enjoyed this one more. Probably due to the controls. I always thought the Generations Sonic felt pretty sluggish, but weirdly floaty when jumping. I never enjoyed 2D platforming in that game. Sonic Unleashed kinda had the opposite problem, it was far too slippery. Colors is honestly a really good balance between the two, and this Sonic was built very well for both 3D Speedy Sonic gameplay and 2D platforming, what with his sharp turning and double jump. Some of the level design isn't great, but a lot of it is pretty good. The aesthetics and locations of this game are wild and creative. There's a roller coaster in space, a mountain made out of cake, and an aquarium inspired by traditional Japanese architecture, which is my personal favorite. This game has some really hype moments too, like almost outrunning a black hole. It's a genuinely really fun and creative game. The main gimmick of this game is the Wisps, which are little aliens that Sonic saves throughout the game that act as power-ups in gameplay. I understand why people have come to hate these things over the years, what with their overuse in future titles over the following 10 years, but honestly, I've always had a soft spot for these little dudes. Not to mention the powers themselves are pretty cool. I don't even hate the P-switch one. The weakest element in this game is the writing, which is mostly made up of cringy jokes and just general stupidity. The plot itself is fine though, and I can excuse it since I find the gameplay so fun. Overall, Colors is a really creative game that's a lot of fun to play. Ultimate as a port may kinda suck, but hey, at least it's on modern platforms now. I never did think I'd see the day when Sonic Colors came to Steam. Come on, Sega, just port Unleashed already! Okay, again, just hear me out. Again, a bit of a controversial choice to put this one above Sonic 2, but I just feel like this one is also a lot of fun and way more consistent. This is the most recent 2D classic Sonic game, and for once it seems like the current Sonic team, with help from Arzest, finally figured out how to do classic Sonic physics somewhat faithfully. The level design is mostly solid, and even the worst level in this game is just kinda okay. The big new gimmick of this one is the Emerald powers, which grant unique Chaos Emerald specific unlockable powers, and they're mostly pretty fun to use. The game's levels employ a variety of unique gimmicks that, for the most part, are pretty cool. I did cancel my Superstars review, and that's for two reasons. One, I cannot make heads or tails of this story, and two, this is essentially all I have to say about this game. It's just a really solid original 2D Sonic game. The bosses suck though. I get why they're designed the way they are, so that 4 players in a co-op setting can strategize easily without things getting too hectic, but I just think there's a little too much waiting in a lot of these. The music isn't especially consistent either, but I don't want to leave off this section on a sour note, because I really do like this game. I don't think this is a step in the right direction for the classic Sonic series, I just think this is a really great time, and if you have any affection for the classic Sonic games, I'd 100% recommend this one. This is the first Sonic title to be released after the Dreamcast died. The death of the Dreamcast meant that, since Sega had refocused themselves to being a third-party developer, a whole new crowd of gamers would be able to try out Sonic for the first time. And after the very successful Sonic Adventure 2 battle and the absolute disaster of a port job that was Sonic Adventure DX, Sonic Team and Sega released a new mainline Sonic game, and that game was Sonic Heroes. Heroes' gameplay is similar to that of the 2 3D Sonic games that preceded it, except you play as 3 characters at once by switching between formations, and you use the characters' unique abilities to defeat enemies and complete platforming challenges. I think this game's pretty fun, honestly. It doesn't use the exact same movement code of Adventure 1 and 2, but it does have acceleration and physics similar to those games. Besides that, the speed characters play about how you'd expect. Fly characters can shoot their teammates and enemies and fly. No way! And power characters can smash through obstacles and dunk their teammates and enemies. This game has a lot of great and open level design, and despite the fact that the controls are noticeably looser than Adventure 1 or 2, the level design accommodates it in such a way that I find that it's rarely ever a problem. The game sees the return of special stages, and they're fine, I guess. I'd definitely say they're the lowest point of the game, but it doesn't bother me too much because I just find the rest of the game to be a lot of fun. The level aesthetics are varied and creative, the music's great, the story is lighthearted, yet it still managed to capture my attention with its references to the adventure games and the return of Metal Sonic and Shadow. Overall, Heroes is a solid game, and I'd say it's a worthy follow-up to the 2 games that came before, despite it not being as good as either of them in my opinion. It's a fun time though. Ah yes, the most recent mainline 3D Sonic title. We waited 5 years for this one after Forces, so there was a lot of hype and anticipation surrounding it. So how'd it turn out? Well, great in my opinion. This game shifts the focus for 3D Sonic games from boosting as fast as possible through the levels to this massive open world or open zone exploration format where you run around these huge areas, complete platforming challenges, find collectibles, etc. Now, as cool as that concept sounds on paper, it wouldn't work if Sonic didn't control well, and I'm happy to report that he actually controls great here. The turning is the best it's ever been in 3D Sonic, you can move pretty fast, which makes traversal pretty simple, and you can throw yourself off of bits of the environment to go flying, which I think is super cool. Post-update 2, you can even carry your boost momentum into a jump, and transitioning this into a drop dash or falling spin dash is really satisfying. Sonic overall just feels really responsive and precise in this game, and it makes running around these huge areas a lot of fun. And if something isn't exactly to your liking, there are a variety of sliders that you can change to tweak the movement to how you'd prefer it to be. The new combat system introduced in this game makes for some really awesome boss fights, including the now famous Titan fights, with their awesome heavy metal music, and you're just beating the crap out of these gigantic robots, and it's just Man, it's so cool, and the post-launch updates, while not perfect, are solid, with the third one introducing 3 new playable characters who are mostly a lot of fun to play as. Now that we've yet again come to a new start of the real Sonic cycle, hopefully this new gameplay formula can provide us with a lot of fun in the coming years. Frontiers is just a really solid time all around, and while not devoid of problems, it is still a lot of fun. Unleashed was the very first 3D Sonic game, the first good 3D Sonic game to take advantage of the boost formula established in Dimps' Sonic Rush for the DS. Gameplay is split between a 3D reimagining of that playstyle, stages where Sonic turns into a werewolf thing and the game becomes a beat-em-up taking advantage of the werehog's stretchy arms. Yeah, the werehog has stretchy arms, don't ask, it's never really explained. And these hub areas where you can talk to locals, complete challenges, and hunt for medals. In my opinion, the boost gameplay in this game is easily the best it's ever been in 3D. The levels are huge and test your reaction time and how well you can maintain your speed with this godlike power given to you. Tearing through these levels and getting an S rank will never not be satisfying for me. Sonic's controls are a little slippery when not boosting, but unlike Generations, that's rarely ever going to be a scenario you'll come across, so it's not that bad. These stages flow really well once you get good at them and are just a lot of fun in general. The other gameplay style is the werehog, a transformation where Sonic turns into this werewolf type thing. Now, in the defense of everybody who called this stupid, yeah, it kind of is, but gameplay-wise, it's honestly solid. The werehog's gameplay seems to suffer from something of a case of secret ring syndrome, where the game is at its most fun only after you've poured several hours into leveling it up, but the beat-em-up gameplay of the werehog is honestly pretty satisfying in its own right. The game makes good use of the werehog's stretchy arms for platforming and combat. The worst thing about these levels, though, is that Besides that, though, Unleashed is great. This was a solid foundation for the next few years of Sonic, and I think it reinvented 3D Sonic in a way that worked really well. For a while. It may have taken them 3 tries, but they finally got it right. This was Sonic's first proper 3D title. Prior to this, there was technically Sonic 3D Blast, but I'm not sure that counts, and there was Sonic R, but that was a spin-off racing title, and of course there was Sonic Extreme. This guy here almost died in the name of Sonic Extreme. And then he tried to do it again! So for all intents and purposes, this was the very first proper 3D Sonic game, and they really hit it out of the park with this one. Sonic's physics in this game are immaculate, and I'd go so far as to say this is the best Sonic has ever controlled in 3D. Maybe the best he's ever controlled, full stop. The level design is vast and expansive, and while not devoid of jank, has provided me hours of fun. The other 2 best gameplay styles in this game are easily Knuckles' treasure hunting and Gamma's shooting, which are really satisfying to play and feature really great exploration and, well, shooting gameplay respectively. The other 3 gameplay styles in this game aren't quite as good, but they're alright too. Tails' gameplay can be fun, but it's just a little too easy to fly over everything. Amy's controls are a little awkward, but her gameplay's certainly interesting, being an almost survival horror type thing where you run away from this frickin' Megamind looking thing. Big the Cat's gameplay style is... The story is also fantastic. The presentation of the story is visually aged, but the story itself is amazing, with lots of fantastic moments and a hype as crap final boss ending. While not devoid of jank, Sonic Adventure was an amazing first step into 3D Sonic titles, and I'd argue it's still the most straightforward translation of the classic Sonic games into 3D we've ever seen. The game overall is fantastic, and even though I do have some gripes with the gameplay, it doesn't take away from just how good the good parts are. I love this game. This game is near perfection. Sega made the absolute right call here, contracting fans to make a classic Sonic game, because, let's be real here, at the time they would not be able to do it themselves. Mania has an absolute letter of love to the classic Sonic games. It's pretty much everything that they did right in one little package. The physics are perfect, the music is great, the visuals are stunning, and there really isn't a single bad level in here. Even Sonic 3 and Knuckles had Sandopolis Zone Act 2, but with Mania, I can't really think of a single level that I outright dislike. All the level design in this game is stellar. All of this is definitely because the game was, for the first time in over 2 decades, made by people who actually understand classic Sonic. My only real gripe with this game is that it relies a tad too much on reused levels. I don't blame the devs for this was a mandate from Sega after all, but it does hold this game back for me a little. If Evening Star was allowed to fully let loose with a 2D Sonic game, we'd undoubtedly be looking at the very best 2D Sonic game of all time. Possibly the best Sonic game of all time. But as of right now, this isn't quite the best 2D Sonic game. Still, it is fantastic, and honestly, if I had to recommend a Sonic game to a newcomer, this would absolutely be #1 on my list. It's an amazing game and an even better Sonic game. It's a culmination of everything that made Sonic so great up to that point. It's incredible. this is the best 2D Sonic game. As much as I love Sonic Mania, and as much as it is arguably objectively better than this game in a lot of ways, the over-reliance on reused levels puts it a few notches below this one, for me personally. But regardless, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is an absolute masterpiece. The aesthetics in this one are the most beautiful in any of the Genesis Sonic games. The level design finally found that balance of high speed and explorative value that leaned a little too far to one or the other in Sonic 2 and CD respectively. The special stages are easily the best of the Genesis games, the music is great as usual, and the story just feels so massive and epic. This game is just everything I could ever want out of a 2D Sonic game. It's super creative and cool, not to mention it introduced the likes of the Echidnas and Angel Island, which are pretty important to Sonic lore overall. Since the first Sonic game, classic Sonic's physics had improved slightly with each entry. As far as the Genesis and Genesis add-on Sonic titles go, this one is easily the peak of that upward climb. Sonic feels similar to how he did in the past couple entries, but far improved from its predecessors. Tails can actually fly this time, and Knuckles can take advantage of his climbing and gliding to access hidden routes and some extra goodies. All of these abilities impressively fit quite nicely onto a very simplistic control scheme too, and it doesn't feel forced like it does in some other entries. And perhaps even more impressively, the level design manages to accommodate all three of these at once. So much love and care went into the creation of this game, and it absolutely shows in the final product. As far as I'm concerned, this game right here is the pinnacle of 2D Sonic. If we are ever to get a 2D Sonic game to surpass it, well, we won't, so I don't actually know. Wait, what was I saying? Oh yeah, right, this game is absolutely spectacular. If you like Sonic and or 2D platformers, go play this one right now. Yes! They cooked with this one, baby! What more could I ask for from a sequel to the excellent Sonic adventure? Take everything that made it good, remove the lacking parts of the game, improve what remains, improve the flow, and throw it out into the universe. Same day shipping. Shipping. All the gameplay styles in this game are amazing. Sonic's gameplay, which he shares with Shadow, is perhaps the best it's ever been in 3D, being a sort of middle ground between the more straightforward translation of the classics into 3D from Sonic Adventure 1 and the more speedy and reaction time focused gameplay of Unleashed, and it's great stuff. Sonic's controls aren't quite as overpowered as they are in Adventure 1, but I can forgive it because the level design is just so much fun. The only real criticism I can give to this gameplay style is Final Chase, but since the other 9 speed stages are amazing, I can get over it. Oh yeah, there are 10 speed stages in this game, 11 if you count Cannon's Core. People tend to forget that. Knuckles' gameplay, which he shares with Rouge, is also amazing and improves upon Adventure 1's treasure hunting in almost every way. Because the controls are far superior, the level design was built to accommodate the more explorative playstyle, and the ranking system makes finding the emeralds fast all the more satisfying. The nerfed radar is honestly whatever to me, because rarely are 2 of the emeralds in exactly the same place, and the piece generation system is set up in such a way that you'll rarely ever be traversing the same areas twice. Either way, everything else about these stages is fantastic, so it hardly ruins it for me. Also, rap and Tails and Eggman stages? You get to run around in these big mech suits and shoot everything. Need I say more? Racking up combos and getting a perfect score is also incredibly satisfying, especially in Eggman's levels. All in all, every single one of these gameplay styles has provided me hours of joy, and I love each one. The gameplay's structured differently too, with you switching between styles on the fly instead of playing as Sonic for a few hours and then spending an hour maybe on the other styles. I feel like this could be a pro or a con depending on who you ask, but it's a pro for me personally because I enjoy the variety and flow this has over Adventure 1. On this note though, a common criticism that's always brought up with this structure is that the Tails and Knuckles stages take up way more of the game than the Sonic stages, and to that I say, duh? Like, I'm not 5, you don't need to explain inequalities to me. The Tails and Sonic stages take up way more of the game than the Knuckles stages. The Knuckles and Sonic stages take up way more of the game than the Tails stages. This is just how math works. What's your point? This game also has a story, and it's amazing. I'm not going to do a full plot summary because other far more talented individuals than I have already gone in depth explaining why this story is so fantastic, but to sum it up, the government sucks, ensuing shenanigans, and whatever that is. I almost cried at this. Sonic Adventure 2 is amazing, what more can I say? In my opinion, this is the best that Sonic has ever been, period. This game just gets almost everything right, and I love it for that reason. I think that this game right here is an absolute classic that deserves to be remembered as such. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say on all of those. And with this video, I have completed the final step in my rite of passage. I am officially a certified Sonic tuber. This can only mean the best of best things for my life, I'm certain of it. In conclusion, Sonic is cool. That's it.